a healthcare administrator. I've worked in the area for about 30 years. I am a fellow of the American College of Healthcare Executives. Well, let's begin with HIPAA. It's a good place to start. And interestingly enough, HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, was intended to be all about healthcare, health insurance portability, being able to move from job to job and make sure you had insurance, your insurance was portable. They had a clause in that act that spoke to protected health information, and that became a major piece of what that act was all about, particularly for hospitals, long-term care facilities, health facilities, to protect the information. This is information that was once behind secure doors. For example, in a medical record department of a hospital, you can't even get into the department without being buzzed in. When you come in, there's a barrier, some sort of a reception barrier to stop you from even glancing over to somebody who's working on a record to see something. So from that level of security down to a facility closes and they've left stuff available and unlocked is unbelievable and completely inappropriate. I recognize it happens. Why? It's funding, I think. Place closes, it doesn't close because they just decided to move on to something else. It usually closes because of financial constraints, bankruptcy, a fiscal crisis that they're having. So they need a lot of money to protect that information. Somebody has to take those records, put them into a state where they can be archived, and once archived, protected for a long term. They've got to be warehoused in a controlled environment, a secure environment, or they have to be converted digitally in some manner to be secured in that manner. So who's going to pay for that? Who does? Instead, the doors are locked, theoretically, and the information theoretically protected, but obviously, as you've seen, not. The facility is responsible. You can't sell the facility and assume that those records are then part of that responsibility to protect. And there are penalties, and those penalties need to be even larger, obviously, because that is the muscle to enforcement. You're responsible to secure it. We'll let you figure out the method, but if somebody can get access, you didn't do your job. When a facility closes, there needs to be an escrow set aside to wind down the facility. It's not just, well, we're closed and that's it. There is a cost of closing to fully close, and one of the responsibilities should be to set aside some dollars to do that. So let's take a facility that has some hazard in it, asbestos, let's say. It's a lot easier for a developer to go find a pristine piece of land somewhere and just develop it, instead of coming into an area, having to take a building to remove contamination, then demolish, clean up, and now you have the land to begin to build. It's too expensive. So let me state again, I think it's important, the vast majority of facilities handle it properly, secure it, archive it, and protect it. But the test for those who handle it in another manner, the law may not be specific of this is how you need to do it. And that's probably a good thing, that the government isn't telling us every little detail. But by virtue of the fact that that record is accessible, they failed, they didn't do their job. The facility is closing and somebody is selling the asset, the building is going to be used for something different in the future. You can't sell the record with it and assume that that person is going to take it over. That person shouldn't even have access to the record. Even if they said, oh, we'll take care of it, they shouldn't have access. That's like selling Social Security numbers to somebody. So the person, the organization, the nonprofit, for-profit, whatever it is that ran the healthcare facility, they should be responsible for winding down and protecting that information permanently. We have to prioritize, absolutely, but this is an important one. And it is a leak in the boat, as I call it, that is resulting in other losses. Somebody is taking those that protected health information, that's social security numbers and the like, and they are using it in fraud. And if you can get a handle on that, I think you can stop other leaks that are out there in the financial boat. Tax returns being filed, other businesses that are losing money because of somebody's abuse. So you raise the issue of DEA numbers, and you might look and say, well, that's just one more piece of protected information that's released. But what happens to those numbers? Somebody's using those to write false prescriptions. What are they doing with those prescriptions? Well, they're ending up on the street as illegal drugs. Look at all the problems that come from that. Again, you stop that one little problem on the front end, there's probably many problems on the back end that you've corrected. So I think it is important that you get a handle on this. At face value, you may not look and think it's that much. Well, gee, somebody stole a DEA number. What happened with that number? Where's it being used? Who's abusing? What sort of theft? And all the way up to illegal drug use and the implications of that. So I think it is important to get a handle. Should there be a task force that at least assesses, like, how vulnerable are we? And takes a look, and I'm sure somewhere it'd be pretty easy to get a list of the facilities that have closed, and somebody to do a quick check. All right, let's just take a quick look at those facilities. What state are they in? I could almost see a little scorecard listing them out. 100 facilities have closed. Here's the scorecard. Are they completely closed and records somehow secured? Absolutely, moved off site, all the way to, gee, they boarded it up and fenced it off, but it's sitting out there open and vulnerable. So you take a list like that, and then you start working through it. Here are the top 5, 10 facilities that are most vulnerable, and those are the ones we're going to put some emphasis on to get some money to truly close them and protect. So I think there are ways. Not going to be inexpensive, but it's not impossible either. To find the problem is the first step towards a solution. Certainly it's going to take dollars to maintain them in another location, but they have to be. That one step, though, of relocating them, I think, is critical.